questions. These kinds of lectures often create more questions than they actually answer, but I'll do my best quickly to run through the basics. It's great to see a couple veterans from way back, Sam and others here today, who were involved with this at the very beginning. And I will say, for those of you who know Ann Hancock, she was a great and very intense client. But yeah, if you don't yet, you will. But she was incredibly inspirational, along with a former supervisor, Harry Moore. Ann and Harry probably did more to intrigue me with the notion of taking a community into sustainability than many individuals I've run into. I was a corporate guy. I was doing a lot of environmental consulting work in the private sector. And a little over 10 years ago, I became intrigued with the notion of helping Marin walk its talk and truly walk its talk towards sustainability. And as is the case with Sonoma, managing growth, managing consumption, a pretty high-end lifestyle with a large ecological footprint, that's a tough mandate. And our counties probably represent two of the worst actors in metropolitan areas with respect to our transportation systems. And everybody knows that transportation is a huge part of the problem, weighing in perhaps for our counties at about 60% of our climate gas emission profile. I also came to realize back in my first term, 04 to 08, that, oh my God, if we have to wait to address climate change by reinventing our land use policies and getting SMART started and built and getting the shuttles attached to it, it would be way too late. And so I'm driven by a lot of vision and excitement about the kind of walkable, livable communities we can aspire to, but I'm also driven by a lot of fear that we don't have a lot of time to fool around waiting to cut greenhouse gas emissions. So when I bumped into the notion of community choice aggregation back in 2002, it occurred to me and Sam and Don Wise and Alex Hines and some others early that there may be a way to create a container for energy efficiency, energy-related implementation efforts, and for community choice aggregation that could dramatically increase the cuts available in the short term from greenhouse gas emissions. Marin, unlike Sonoma, had no enterprise agencies associated with any of the municipalities. So with Sonoma County Water Agency and some of the other businesses you have up here, you're more familiar with a model of using an enterprise agency to achieve results than we were in Marin. So we had another critical constraint. How can we cut greenhouse gas fast without using up a bunch of general fund dollars to get there, while the people and political leaders became acquainted with this new beast, which is an enterprise agency that uses ratepayer dollars to finance the operations of an agency? Frankly, for most people in Marin, that was a stretch, and it accounted for about 3 years of the process we had to live through. At the end of the day, the punchline of today's presentation is that through the history we've lived through, we've ended up with an enterprise agency that is profitable, that has already cut 120,000 tons per year of greenhouse gas at only 20% implementation of our electric load. It's costing the general fund taxpayer not one dime, creates no risk for the taxpayer, and portends extremely well for the future of enabling new renewable energy generators to get online quickly. So at the end of the day, we've reached the conclusion that the model we lived with and through turned out to be better than we had hoped in achieving the 3 critical goals. Not using up a bunch of taxpayer money to launch something that could radically cut greenhouse gas, to do something that turned out to be attractive to the ratepayer every step of the way. So we had a constraint that we had to have competitive rates, and at the same time contribute to the democratization, if you will, the competitiveness of the renewable energy market, even if all we did was buy power in the early years before we could build our own power assets. And the agency is blowing away those targets completely, which is exciting. And it's going so well that, quite frankly, tomorrow night we're offering the job of executive officer to Dawn Wise, who's been working for us for the last 2 years as our interim director. She has blown away every operational and executive challenge we could have put in front of her, and she's just done it in stunning fashion. And that comes partially with incredibly strong recommendations coming at me from different directions out of the private sector saying, you'd better hire her. So it was made very clear to us that our success really did come in large part from some outstanding leadership that we were able to get early. How many of you are familiar with community choice aggregation? Great. So I can blow through some of these slides quickly. So the notion of the Marin Energy Authority is to serve as a container, the values of which will achieve many things, from energy efficiency to more competition in the renewable energy markets and implementation of our community choice program called Marin Clean Energy. And I want to make a clear distinction between our philosophy of using the agency as the container. That's a very different philosophy than the one San Francisco is using to implement community choice aggregation. What they're trying to do is integrate all of their energy efficiency value, local economic development values, local construction goals, and the implementation of community choice aggregation all in one contract through their CCA program. What we decided to do in Marin was to be a lot more conservative and separate those things and use the agency as the container for our values: energy efficiency, green building techniques, food waste to energy, energy efficiency, etc., and community choice aggregation, rather than trying to implement all those good values in one program. And that's a fundamentally different approach that two counties that sit next to each other are using. In our case, community choice aggregation for Marin Clean Energy was set up with these goals: to expand market competition, to raise our use of renewable power, and hence cut our greenhouse gas emission, so that Marin, frankly, could have bragging rights among communities as a location that really is cutting greenhouse gas emission even while we still drive SUVs. It's a real dilemma for us. We also knew we had to do this without a bunch of general fund dollars in the agency. The County of Marin, tip to stern, basically put in about $300,000 over 8 years to investigate community choice aggregation. Over about, let's see, I should separate it. Over 6 years, the County of Marin spent a whopping total, and that includes staff time allocated. We spent about 6 years and a little under $300,000 to study the issue. In 2008, to launch our energy authority, the county lent us $500,000, and we just paid back that loan in full on January 11th. And the notion was we had to do it for a very modest upfront investment because we didn't have much general fund available to try to pursue these greenhouse gas emission cuts. An aspect of community choice, which you may be aware of already, is that one of the appealing features of it is you make all your decisions in a local board.